Hey everyone! Welcome back to English Daily Talk, your space for real stories, real emotions, and real English. I'm Jessica. Ciao ne!
And I'm Chris. Wherever you are right now, walking to work, washing the dishes, or maybe sitting in a cafe with a drink in your hand, we're really happy you pressed play today.
Today's episode is called The Coffee Cup We Forget to Thank. It's not really about coffee, although there is definitely coffee in this story. So,
It's more about something we almost never think about: the people working quietly in the background who make our lives smoother, easier, and more comfortable, and how easily we take them for granted.
as always in our C1 series, we'll move through 3 parts first: a story, then a reflective discussion, and finally, a language spotlight where we pick out some advanced expressions and structures you can steal for your own English.
So, if you can, take a breath, slow down a little, and maybe look around you. Someone, somewhere near you, is probably doing a small task for you right now, without you even realizing it.
All right, let's step into the cafe together.
So, Jessica, where does this story begin?
It starts on a Tuesday evening, right after a long day of recording and answering emails. I was tired, mentally drained, and to be honest, just a little bit grumpy. I remember thinking, I deserve a coffee. A big one,
I support that thought.
right? So I walked to my usual cafe, the one on the corner with the warm yellow lights and the slightly squeaky door. It was almost closing time, maybe 30 minutes before they shut the doors. The place was nearly empty.
I can picture it. A few people on laptops, some slow jazz in the background, staff cleaning up in that quiet, efficient way.
Exactly. There were only 3 customers left. One woman typing furiously on her laptop, a couple whispering to each other, and me. Behind the counter was the barista I had seen 100 times before. I recognized his face. I knew his voice. I even knew his usual greeting. Hey, what can I get started for you? But I didn't know his name.
That already says a lot.
It does. So I ordered my usual, a latte with an extra shot of espresso, because, again, long day. He made it quickly, handed it to me with a smile, and said, "Have a good evening." I smiled back, said, "Thanks," and moved away.
Standard, polite, automatic.
Completely automatic. I sat down near the window, opened my laptop, pretended I was going to do something productive, and then just stared at my screen.
That level of productivity is very familiar to me.
Same. But then something small caught my attention. One of the other customers, the woman with the laptop, left. She quietly packed her things, put on her coat, and walked out. And as soon as the door closed behind her, the barista walked over to her table.
Let me guess, the table was a disaster.
Not really a disaster, but you could tell someone had been working there for hours. There was an empty coffee cup, a half-finished muffin, crumbs everywhere, a used napkin, and a tissue on the chair that had fallen from her bag, I think. Nothing unusual, nothing dramatic. But I watched the barista.
What did he do?
He didn't sigh. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't complain. He just silently picked up the cup, threw away the napkins, wiped the crumbs off the table, and then, very carefully, wiped the chair where the tissue had been. Then he went back behind the counter and continued cleaning.
So just normal cafe work.
Exactly. Completely normal. And for some reason that night, the normalness of it really struck me. I suddenly became very aware of how many small tasks were happening in the background, completely outside my usual field of attention.
That's interesting, because most of the time, we only notice cafe staff when something goes wrong, when our order is late, or wrong, or the table is still sticky.
Yes. I realized that I had walked into that cafe with a kind of quiet expectation. It will be clean. My drink will appear. I will have a chair and a table. My coffee cup will disappear when I'm done. And that expectation was invisible to me until I actually watched him do the work.
So what changed for you in that moment?
At first, nothing dramatic. I just noticed. But that simple act of noticing started a whole chain of reflections. I looked around and suddenly I could see the invisible work everywhere. The floor that had clearly been swept. The trash bin that wasn't overflowing. The cleaned cups lined up like soldiers, ready to serve. The milk jug that had been wiped down, even though customers never see the sticky mess it can become.
You sound like you've worked in a cafe before.
I have, actually, when I was younger, which made it even more surprising that I'd stopped seeing all this. Sometimes, when you move on in life, you forget the details of where you came from.
So you sat there with your coffee, watching.
Yes, like a quiet observer. After a while, the couple left. And again. The barista repeated the same little ritual, collecting cups, wiping tables, pushing chairs back in. Then he brought out a bucket and mop and started cleaning the floor, moving chairs one by one, lifting them gently so they wouldn't scrape too loudly.
And how did the other customers react?
Well, by that point, I was the only customer left. The jazz music was softer, the lights felt warmer, and the world outside the window looked cold and dark. Inside, this one person was quietly restoring order, erasing the tiny traces of strangers so the place would be ready for a new day.
That's actually a beautiful way to describe cleaning. Restoring order.
It is, isn't it? And as I watched him, I suddenly felt a little uncomfortable.
Why?
Because I realized that in my mind, he was almost part of the furniture. Like the tables, like the chairs, like the coffee machine. Reliable, functional, always there. I had never thought about his day, his tired feet, his routine of repeating this cleaning sequence again and again, every evening.
The coffee cup we forget to thank is actually the person behind the cup.
Exactly. The title is a bit of a trick. We hold the cup in our hands, maybe take a picture for Instagram, but we forget the human chain behind it, the barista, the cleaner, the person who roasted the beans, the driver who delivered them. But that night, my focus was fully on this one barista.
Did you talk to him?
Not yet. At that moment, I just finished my coffee and packed up. As I walked to the counter to leave my empty cup, I felt this urge to say something more than just thanks. But my brain froze.
Classic.
I know. I suddenly became weirdly self-conscious about saying anything unusual. So instead, I just said, "Thank you. Have a good night." He smiled, said, "You too." And that was it.
But the story obviously doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't. That night when I got home, I kept thinking about him. I started replaying that quiet scene in my head, and like a lens zooming out, I started seeing other invisible helpers, from my day the bus driver who got me safely across town, the cleaner in the office building who was mopping the floors at 7 a.m., the delivery guy who carried a heavy package up to the third floor with no elevator.
It's like once you notice one, you suddenly notice them everywhere.
Exactly. And it made me realize something slightly uncomfortable about myself. I was very polite, but not very present. I said thank you often, but in a mechanical, habitual way. Words without real attention behind them.
That's a powerful distinction, polite versus present.
That became the core of my reflection. So I made a quiet decision the next time I went to that cafe. I would at least ask the barista's name and say a real, specific thank you.
I love that. So when did you go back?
2 days later, on Thursday. Same place, same warm lights, same squeaky door. I walked in and there he was again, behind the counter, wiping down the machine.
And did your brain freeze again?
Almost. But I had prepared myself. I ordered as usual, and when he handed me my drink and said, "There you go," I took a breath and said, "Hey, I come here a lot, but I realized I don't actually know your name."
Bold move.
He looked a bit surprised. Then he smiled and said, "Oh, I'm Min." Then he added, "I've seen you here a lot too. Latte extra shot, right?" We both laughed.
Instant human connection.
Yes, and it felt so simple. Then I said something like, "Thanks for always keeping this place so clean and calm. I really appreciate it. It's kind of my little escape spot after long days." He looked genuinely touched and said, "That means a lot. Thank you for saying that."
That's it. That's the moment.
It really was. It took maybe 10 seconds, but it changed the way I felt about the cafe. Suddenly, it wasn't just a place. It was a space held together by a person I now knew by name.
And I'm guessing after that, you kept noticing more invisible work?
All the time. It became a habit. I started to see the behind the scenes everywhere. The office security guard who always holds the door a little longer if he sees someone rushing. The woman at the supermarket who quietly reorganizes the fruit display after customers mess it up. The cleaner in the public bathroom putting extra paper towels in the dispenser before a busy hour.
So what's the invisible weight in this episode? In one of our previous episodes, we talked about invisible emotional weight. What's hidden here? So,
Here, the hidden thing is the value of constant small efforts. People doing thankless tasks that only get noticed when they fail. The irony is that when they do their job perfectly, they become invisible.
right. If the cafe is spotless, we just assume it's normal. If the bus arrives on time, it's normal. If the office is clean every morning, it's normal. We only react when something breaks down.
Exactly. And that's when I started asking myself an uncomfortable question. In how many people's stories am I the invisible helper who never gets thanked? My work, my messages, my preparation for our episodes, the time I spend answering students' questions. How much of it silently supports someone's day without them even realizing it?
That's a really deep question, and a little scary to ask.
It is, but it's also strangely freeing. Because it reminds me that we are all both sometimes we're the main character, and sometimes we're the background character in someone else's scene. Both roles matter.
So what happened with Min after that? Did you keep talking?
Yes, but in small, simple ways. On another day, I asked him, "What time do you usually finish?" He said, "Around 10 p.m. Most people only see the fun part, making the drinks. They don't see the cleaning after." We laughed. He said it lightly, but I could hear the tiredness behind the words.
Ouch, no, that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. Another time, I came in earlier in the day and noticed someone else behind the counter. So I asked where Min was. The other barista said, "Oh, he's on the late shift. He likes it quiet." And that made me think some people literally build their lives around being there when everyone else is going home.
That line hit me. Some people build their lives around being there when everyone else is going home.
Right. It made me softer, more patient. When my order was a bit slow, I stopped checking my watch. When I saw someone cleaning the floor next to my table, I moved my chair and said, "Let me get out of your way." Tiny things, but they felt like a form of respect.
Did you ever do something more concrete for him?
One day, I wrote a short note on a napkin. I didn't overthink it. I just wrote, "Thank you for making this place feel peaceful. Your work really matters." The tired lady with the laptop. I left it on the counter with a slightly bigger tip than usual and walked out quickly before I could get embarrassed.
That's so you.
I know. The next time I came in, Min smiled at me a little wider than usual and said, "Hey, how's your day?" Latte with an extra shot. And I just knew he had seen the note.
No big speech, no drama. Just a small human bridge.
And that's the heart of this story. The coffee cup I had been thanking was never the real object of my gratitude. The real object should have been the human effort behind it. Once I realized that, my relationship with everyday life changed a little.
So if you could summarize the lesson in one sentence, what would it be?
I'd say, our days are quietly held together by people we barely notice until we finally decide to look.
That's powerful. And that brings us naturally into our reflection and discussion part. Okay, let's slow down and unpack this. Dear listener, this is the part where we invite you not just to listen, but to think with us. Maybe even to pause the episode and reflect, if you want.
Let's start with a simple question right now. In your daily routine, who are the mins in your life? The people you see often, but don't really see.
It could be the security guard at your building, the cleaning staff in your office, the barista, the bus driver, the woman who sells breakfast on your street, the receptionist at your doctor's office.
Or the colleague who always fixes the printer. Or the person in your family who always remembers to buy toilet paper. Or your roommate who quietly washes the dishes most of the time.
I love that you mentioned toilet paper. That's another truly thankless task.
It is. And that's where the expression, take something for granted, becomes so relevant. When we say we take something for granted, we mean we assume it will always be there. We don't really question it. We don't fully appreciate it.
Let's give a couple of examples. For instance, I took the cleanliness of my office for granted until the cleaners went on strike. Or, we often take our health for granted until we get sick.
Exactly. And in this episode, one of the main ideas is that we don't just take objects or situations for granted, we take people for granted. We act as if their work just happens, instead of recognizing that it's a real effort made by a real human being.
I also want to talk about another phrase, behind the scenes. When we say that something happens behind the scenes, we mean it happens out of public view, in the background.
Right. Movies have actors on the screen, but whole teams are working behind the scenes. Directors, camera operators, editors, sound designers. In daily life, your coffee, your clean street, your electricity, your running water. These all have behind-the-scenes teams.
There's also the phrase, unsung hero. That's a person who does something important but doesn't get praise or recognition. In Jessica's story, Min is an unsung hero of her evenings.
Yes. Without him, the cafe wouldn't feel as peaceful or welcoming. But most people walk in, enjoy the space, and leave without ever thinking of him as a hero of their comfort.
Let's throw a question to the listener. When you think about your life, who has been an unsung hero for you? Maybe a teacher, a friend, a family member, someone at work.
And here's a follow-up. Have you ever told them? Have you ever said, you know what you do really matters to me?
And if not, what stops you?
That's a big one. In my case, it was embarrassment. I worried it would sound strange or too emotional or that I would make the other person uncomfortable. My brain would say, nah, just stay quiet. It's fine.
I think many of us feel that. We're afraid of being awkward, so we stay silent. But the interesting thing is, when someone sincerely thanks us, we rarely think, wow, that was awkward. We think, oh, that was nice.
Exactly. We forget that most people are starving for genuine appreciation. Not exaggerated compliments, just simple, specific gratitude. I see what you're doing. I recognize your effort.
I want to highlight another distinction you made earlier, being polite versus being present. Politeness is like a basic operating system. Please. Thank you. Excuse me. It keeps society running smoothly. But presence adds depth. It's when you mentally slow down enough to actually mean what you're saying.
I like to think of it like this: politeness is the words. Presence is the attention behind the words. You need both.
Let's turn this into a mini reflection exercise for our listeners.
Great idea. If you're able to, you can pause after each question and actually think or even write something down.
Question 1. Who is one person in your daily routine whose work usually goes unnoticed by you?
Question 2. What exactly do they do that makes your life easier, even in a small way? Taso.
Question 3. How would your day feel different if they suddenly disappeared?
Question 4. What is one simple, realistic way you could express appreciation to them this week? It doesn't have to be big. It could be using their name, saying a specific thank you, leaving a note, or just smiling and making eye contact.
And here's a language-related bonus question. What English words or phrases could you use to express that gratitude? We'll help with that in the language spotlight.
I also want to say this sometimes. You are the invisible helper. Maybe you're the one staying late at work so others can leave on time. Maybe you're the one doing emotional labor, listening, supporting, guiding without much recognition.
If that's you, we see you. Thank you. Even if the people around you don't say it often, what you do matters.
And maybe you can use this episode as a reason to also thank yourself. Not in an arrogant way, but in a gentle, honest way. I've been doing a lot. I'm allowed to recognize that.
So, this episode is really an invitation in two directions to notice the unsung heroes around you and to recognize the quiet value of your own efforts. All
right, let's move into our language spotlight and look at some useful advanced expressions and structures from today's story and discussion.
Welcome to the Language Spotlight, our C1 playground. We'll pick out some key phrases and grammar patterns from the episode that you can start using in your own speaking and writing.
Today, we'll focus on 3 things. 1. Useful expressions about invisible work and gratitude. 2. Emphatic structures, like rarely do we. 3. A couple of nice phrases to talk about emotional realization.
Let's start with useful expressions.
Expression 1. Take something for granted. Meaning to assume that something will always be there, or that it's normal, so you don't fully appreciate it. Example. We often take essential workers for granted until there's a crisis.
Listener practice. Can you think of something you used to take for granted, but don't anymore?
Expression 2. Behind the scenes. Meaning happening in the background, not visible to the public. Example. There's a whole team working behind the scenes to keep this app running smoothly.
Expression 3. A thankless task. Meaning a job or duty that people rarely appreciate, even though it's important. Example. Managing people's expectations can be a thankless task.
Expression 4. An unsung hero. Meaning someone who does great or important things but doesn't get attention or praise. Example. My grandmother was the unsung hero of our family.
Expression 5. Go unnoticed. Meaning not be seen or recognized. Example. Most of his hard work went unnoticed by his colleagues.
These expressions are perfect for talking about people like Min, or anyone whose work is essential but invisible.
Now let's move to emphatic structures, which are very C1 level and sound great in storytelling or speeches.
Structure 1. Rarely do we. This is called inversion for emphasis. Instead of saying, we rarely notice the cleaners, you can say, rarely do we notice the cleaners who keep our workplaces clean. The pattern is rarely plus do, does, did, plus subject, plus base verb.
It sounds more dramatic, more formal, and more powerful. Try other examples like, rarely do we stop to think about who cleaned this room. Rarely do people thank the staff after an event.
Structure 2. Only when, plus inversion. Example. Only when the café is dirty do we realize how much work the staff usually do. Pattern. Only when plus clause, plus do, does, did, plus subject, plus base verb.
Let's give another one. Only when he stopped working did we understand how much he had been doing for us.
Structure 3. Not just, but also. This is great for adding depth and contrast. Example from our story. He was not just making coffee. He was also creating a peaceful space for people to rest.
Listener challenge. Can you create a sentence about someone in your life using not just, but also? For example, she's not just my colleague, but also one of the few people I can really trust.
Beautiful. Now, the third category. Phrases to talk about emotional realization. These help you describe moments when you suddenly understand something on a deeper level.
Phrase 1. It suddenly hit me that, meaning I suddenly realized that. Example. It suddenly hit me that I had never asked the barista's name.
Phrase 2. I became aware that, meaning I started to notice or understand that. Example. I became aware that my politeness was automatic, not truly sincere.
Phrase 3. I started to see, meaning I began to notice something that had been there all along. Example. After that evening, I started to see invisible helpers everywhere.
These phrases are perfect when you want to tell a reflective story in English, like we do in this C1 series. They help you move beyond simple facts and into deeper insight. So,
To wrap up this language spotlight, let's put a few of these together in a short paragraph.
listen to this mini paragraph and try to catch the expressions and structures. Only when the cafe closed did it suddenly hit me that I had taken the staff for granted. Rarely do we stop to think about the people working behind the scenes to keep our favorite places clean and welcoming. That evening, I started to see them as unsung heroes, doing thankless tasks that usually go unnoticed.
That little paragraph is like a concentrated version of today's episode.
If you want a challenge, you could write your own short paragraph using at least 2 or 3 of these expressions. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just try to use the language actively.
All right, it's time to slowly close this episode, just like Min slowly closes the cafe at the end of the day.
Today, we walked into a simple cafe and discovered that behind one coffee cup, there was a whole story. A story about invisible work, quiet effort, and the people who make our lives more livable without asking for much in return.
We talked about how easy it is to take those people for granted, and how a tiny action, a sincere thank you, asking someone's name, or leaving a note, can create a real human connection.
We also explored some C1 expressions like take something for granted, behind the scenes, a thankless task, unsung hero, and go unnoticed. And we played with emphatic structures like rarely do we and only when.
Our invitation for you this week is simple. Notice one invisible helper in your daily life. Just one. And then, if you can, do something small to show appreciation in your own language or in English.
And if you feel like practicing your English, you can even write to us in your mind, Dear Unsung Hero, I see you. Thank you for... Then fill in the blank with what they actually do.
Remember, your English doesn't have to be perfect to be meaningful. Your words, especially words of gratitude, are already valuable.
Thank you for spending this time with us today, for listening with your mind and your heart. We know you have many things to do, and we don't take your attention for granted.
We really don't. If you enjoyed this episode, you can listen again, pause to take notes, or even shadow some of the sentences to practice your pronunciation and rhythm.
Until next time, take care of yourself. Notice the quiet helpers around you, and keep growing your English, one real story at a time.
This is Chris.
And Jessica,
Saying bye for now.
see you in the next episode of English Daily Talk.